I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryan, and I'm your host for today's show. I have the absolute pleasure of being able to interview Mr. Brandyn Miller. Brandyn, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. It is a little bit of a rainy morning here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, but other than that, it is just a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the invite, James.
No, that's pretty cool. So Brandyn, as you know, I do know that you actually listen to the show. You are a frequent listener to the Engineer Your Success podcast.
Whether you know it or not, you spend a couple of miles with me at least one morning every week.
No, I appreciate that. And so Brandyn has reached out on LinkedIn and other times, letting me know, and on Facebook, letting me know the impact that some of the episodes have had. And I absolutely wanted to have Brandyn on the show because I think he has a very interesting story. So Brandyn, we're going to include the links for people to know more about you. Your bio is going to be in the show notes, things like that. But what I do ask every guest is tell us something about you that would not show up in that bio.
Yikes. Well, way to start with a softball. Thanks, James. So, many people get to a level in their career or they have this vision when they start out, and that is awesome. I wandered for a ton of years and just acquired bits and pieces as I went along. I'm completely self-educated. I actually started in college, never finished a degree program, but started in physics, largely due to some bad high school counseling advice because they wanted to say that they sent somebody off to get a physics major, I think. But it didn't fit. And college really didn't fit for me. So what was left to do? You got to pay rent somehow. So I spent years in multiple different careers trying to find a way that fit for me.
Oh, wow. So, you started out, people were trying to put you in this box as so you must have been good at math and science. So they say, oh yeah, he's good at math and science, but he'll be great at physics. You get to college and you're like, this is not working for me. And so you spend time kind of testing things out and dabbling here and there to cobble a career and a life that fit you.
And finding alternate ways to learn. And that was the big thing. In high school, I was pretty okay at math and science, but it was very easy for me, the high school level stuff. So I never established routines. I never established study habits. When I got to college, and you were expected to just get that stuff done and have those practices in place. And I didn't have those. And then I quickly found that without those, I lost interest in the things that sparked my fantasy and my wonder about the world of physics and science altogether. So again, getting into business and trying to pay the bills, had to figure out what method of learning actually connected with me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's interesting that you bring that up. And I think this is absolutely key. It is that schooling and education is not just about that end result. It's not just about the grade. It's not about the degree, but it's learning how to learn and building in those habits. And because those habits weren't there, it wasn't fun anymore. You weren't getting good grades. You weren't understanding. And so you weren't getting that dopamine hit of, I'm excelling, I'm exceeding. There was no motivation or momentum.
100%. And really, the disconnect between the instruction. I went to a large university, Virginia Tech, which I love, still love it. But coming from a very small town in West Virginia where I went to high school, where we had 210 people in our entire graduating class, most of our classes would have had 12 to 15 people in them. Mm-hmm. And my freshman year at Tech, every class I had was 300, 400, 500 yes. people in all of your 101s. And, just here's a little guy standing up on stage that you can barely see from the back row, facing away from you, writing on a then chalkboard. I'll give you a little bit of my age.
Yes.
And for 50 minutes, and then drops his chalk, walks out of the room, and we're left to deal with the syllabus to complete.
Wow. Wow. I didn't know how similar our stories were, Brandon. I started out at Drexel University in Philadelphia, kind of had the same experience of being a really, a whole bunch of students in the class and getting lost in all of that. So that's pretty cool. And I went to grad school at Virginia Tech. So there's several
Awesome.
multiple connections
Go
there. But
Hokies.
yes. But let's get back to your story. Let's get back to your story.
So from there, again, I was paying my own way through college. And that was another distraction is, I was working for the world's absolute worst boss. But that was actually an okay thing for me. I was pretty malleable, didn't really care. But every time somebody else called in sick or quit, they would call me and say, do you want to pick up more hours? So then I had this dilemma. Do I want to go to class and feel like I'm lost, feel bored, feel uninspired, or do I want to go make time and a half and it's only Tuesday because I've worked 12-hour shifts the first 2 days or whatever?
Yeah.
So I would always choose to go to work. Well, in the meantime, some of the most valuable lessons that I've ever learned are what not to do.
So what were some of those? What were some of those things, Brandon?
Well, again, the world's worst boss. And again, I won't say what company or who this person was. I remember her name very vividly. But it was essentially one of the things that we all do. And I've never done this to my kids, but I've heard maybe other parents have, is they see an issue and they expect the employee to see the same issue and resolve it.
Yes.
And then they see it again and it's still unresolved. And then they see it a third time and it's still unresolved. So they yell at the employee because they didn't do something they were never told to do.
Yeah.
Now, I know some parents out there may have done this to their children. Again, I've only read about that in stories.
Well, not only parents, but managers will do the same thing. And it's this whole ideal that people can't read your mind. They cannot read
100%.
Yeah.
How do I know? Because I do it all the time.
Yeah. So you had the world's worst boss. So you're learning in terms of if there's something that you need done, you need to be able to communicate that to the people around you.
Absolutely. And, just having, and I didn't know it at the time, but just setting expectations and really saying, what does winning look like? One of the, and I'm not a big sports fan, but I use sports analogies all the time because you think of Tom Brady just retired after a stellar career.
Yes.
But can you imagine any professional football player say, hey, let's go to the sandlot and play. Let's go to an unmarked field. Winning is somewhere over there and we'll tell you, maybe. And then, how many times did the sandlot call do-overs or no, you didn't get to the bush, you only got to the shrub or, professionals don't do that. Not only do they need to know where the goal line is, but every one of those 5-yard marks, 10-yard marks, and the hash marks in between, and knowing exactly that every field is going to have the same measurement so that they always know what winning looks like. I looked for that. Again, much like college, it was like, I have a goal. I'll let you know if you get there.
Okay.
And I was lost.
Okay. So
went to work.
You went to work.
I have a goal. I'll let you know if you get there. And I was lost.
So you went to work, you were there, bad boss. And then, so obviously you didn't stay in that situation because you've continued to evolve and to grow, right?
Well, with that same company, I ended up working there almost a dozen years, but I was the youngest store manager. Well, in that same location, I became a supervisor, then a department head, then an assistant manager. And while I was still at that location, they had a position that they called manager at large. And basically I went, still had that store as a home base in Christiansburg, and bounced to 6 or 8 other stores to put out fires, to help do grand openings, to do all these things. After I had started figuring out how to install systems, and after I had figured out how I need to learn that actually connects. And part of that was, again, showing my age, books on tape, before CDs even, and being an auditory learner. and being able to execute some of those things. And it's just like, why doesn't everyone do this? And then from there, became the youngest store manager in the company at 21 years old,
Wow.
and would sit in rooms full of, district managers, VPs. And I remember being in one of those rooms, and there was probably 15 or 20 of us in the room. And they looked at one of the ladies 2 or 3 seats away from me. And they said, "Oh, I think you're the youngest manager we have. How old are you?" And again, she said, "Well, I'm 26." And I remember biting my tongue and kind of leaning back, not wanting to be singled out as being 5 years younger than she was.
Wow. So now you're in management, you're able to take some of the lessons that you've learned about how not to communicate or how not to function, and you're actually employing this now.
Some of them, and again, not a ton, just like Sisyphus every morning starts that ball rolling, and that first revolution is a lot of work.
Yeah.
But started to learn some systems and really find some things that work every time you use them. And it's amazing. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to start at the bottom and start pushing every morning.
Yeah.
When we use these things, we get to build momentum. And once we have momentum, we get to add a little bit more juice to it.
So you took the concept of how you learn and implementing systems, and you've taken that, part of what your analogy was saying on a football team, you have to know where the goal line is, where the measurements are. It's all the same. So now you can come up with your systems and your strategy to actually execute what it is you want to execute. And so you've taken this approach, and where else have you applied it?
Well, that's kind of funny because in retail management, retail has gone through many, many shifts, and not just recently, but back, this is over 20 years ago now, having these systems and having these processes and also implementing them in our lives. My wife and I decided if we wanted to have kids and grow our family, that retail management was probably the worst possible place for anybody to be that wants to spend time with their kids, specifically at Christmas time.
Yeah.
So we came up with a plan to pay off everything that we had. We had just our house payment and insurance. Everything else, we were completely debt free. And when my wife was pregnant with our first son, so the plan was for me to stay at home and be at home with the kids. So this was an unmentioned plan to my job, and sometimes higher powers. No matter what you believe, the universe conspires to help you win.
Yeah.
And our plan was, she was due in August, and our plan was for me to work through May of that year, and it was 2002. Well, February 28th, coming up on an anniversary, as a matter of fact,
oh, wow.
20 years ago, my district manager walks in, and we knew that there was a corporate restructure going on, and they had some district managers and some people in the corporate office that were being not let go, but there was restructuring and displacements, and they were given several different options. Well, the more senior you were, the more options that you had, and one of the options was to take over management of a store. And I was running one of the largest stores in our area, and it happened to be in the hometown of not my district manager, but one of the other managers that was on the store set team. Well, his option was to take over my store.
Oh, wow.
So on the 28th of February, my district manager comes in and says, "Hey, we've got this restructuring going on. We have some options, but this is what's happening. You can either take another store, or we've got a 6-month severance package." And so I was like, to be completely fair, we're 5 months pregnant. I hadn't let you know because, again, this is our first, and long story short, it was like the universe saying, not only do we want you to get out of this job, but here's a little bonus. Enjoy yourself for the. So I spent the next 7 years at home with my two kids. And if you can imagine the lone dad on the playground that doesn't have a diaper bag, because at the time, forgive me, fashion police, but all I wore was cargo shorts. But I had enough pockets to keep everything I needed, not for two kids, but in the same time, I borrowed two girls to keep my two boys company.
Oh.
Our neighbors had kids that were about the same age, so I had all four of them with me all the time.
Oh, wow.
And
Brandon, that's pretty cool, man. You were able to, at an early age, construct the life that you wanted. One of the things that we talk about here on the podcast, as you know, is helping people win at work and at home, and how you can actually take the steps to design the kind of life that you want. And you're a living example of that. Not only have you done it there, you've done it in other areas, and as you've continued to progress, but that's a really cool story.
Yeah. And it again, the universe will conspire to help you win every time. It is amazing how many resources get drawn to you. And all my wife and I did was say, retail is not the best environment to raise kids.
Yeah.
And everything came to show us, get out of retail and do this instead. So in the meantime, as I'm hanging out with four kids, two of mine and two borrowed, an opportunity at FedEx comes up, and it's working 2 to 3 hours per evening. So it would be from 6:30 to 9:30, given or taken. And, oh, by the way, it comes with benefits.
Ooh.
And so I'm like 12 hours a week, plus I get full medical, dental, and vision, the whole spiel. So it allowed my wife to continue doing what she did, but actually make a considerable amount more money, because she created her own company and then subcontracted out to the school system, which, if you know anything about schools, they don't pay a ton. But when you have a specialized need that's federally mandated, they contract out to private companies. So it allowed us really to continue that next step. Okay. And who else better to learn systems and frameworks and repeatable processes than a transportation industry that runs the world on time? Yeah. So it was this beautiful thing that, again, was installing all of these things that I didn't have as a younger person, that I missed from my college experience and from that early working experience. And this was just another level of repeatable processes that work every time you use them. Wow. Okay. From there, I was on the line for most of the time, and then I also did dangerous goods specialist, which just kind of goes back to my need for detail and order. But blew my shoulder out, and not an uncommon injury in the transportation industry. We had two guys that worked on in the warehouse with me, and they both had shoulder surgery. Oh, wow. One guy was back at work in 6 to 8 weeks, feeling better than ever, not a problem. The other guy had a repeated surgery, ended up on disability, and never, was able to restore full function in his shoulder. Yeah, so I had a sample of two at a 50% success rate. So when my shoulder, started, and you can still see a lateral deviation, but my right shoulder was about 2 inches lower than my left. Wow. And I decided, you can never uncut somebody, but maybe there's other things that you can do. And that was my introduction to massage therapy, which iterated really my third career. Oh, wow. Okay. From there, not only did massage therapy help me restore function in my shoulder, but my wife was rear-ended. I had a pretty significant injury, and wanted me to constantly rub her neck and shoulders. And it's like, your neck is kind of the gateway to your brain, and I don't know enough to not hurt you. She said, well, go find out. So she sent me to massage therapy school. Oh, cool. And that's how I started my wellness center. But, eventually, for years, I saw people in and out of the massage therapy industry. When I first got in there, because I ended up going back to teach at the community college where I was certified, the statistics were the average salary for a massage therapist in the United States was $22,000 a year. 84% of all massage therapists had at least one other job just to make ends meet.
Oh, wow.
50,000 massage therapists every year left the profession for the number one of three reasons, but the number one reason they left is because they couldn't make any money. But on the flip side of that same coin, 42% of all spas, resorts, hotels, wellness clinics were looking for massage therapist help. So the equations didn't line up.
Yeah.
And again, knowing now what I learned in retail management and working for the world's worst boss, I could look around and see, why those salons and spas and resorts needed help or couldn't keep help. And I also saw why massage therapists didn't make any money. So after working
Ooh.
for somebody else and being a subcontractor for years and begging them to not only, try some different things because what they were doing wasn't working, I fell into those very same statistics. I was actually a little bit lower. I made $14,000 a year as a contractor. I worked two other jobs because I continued working at FedEx after I got certified. And I worked 3 nights a week, overnights at Harris Teeter. Again, taking all of this time to find the missing parts, to
Okay.
find the processes that were missing that caused the disconnect for people not being able to make money. And that's when I found these systems that work every time you use them. And it's funny because it all comes back to that manager that was expecting somebody to do something, but never told them.
Oh, wow.
It's simple communication. It is simple, just setting the expectation and telling people what they need to do to achieve success.
Wow. So let's unpack that for a little bit. So, all right, you were at FedEx, you got the opportunity to go to FedEx. You're doing the FedEx thing, you blow out your shoulder, and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't want to have surgery. I see what, it could help, it could hurt. Are there any other options? Got introduced to massage therapy. Your wife got rear-ended. You're doing, you're trying to help your wife, but you're like, there's more to this. There has to be more. And she says, you know what? Go to school, go learn about it, and then you can come help me. Right. So then you come back, you're able 100%. To help her get better, but then you're able to see it. And it's interesting throughout your whole story. You're looking, you're observing, but you're able to see the gaps. And when you begin to see the gaps, you're like, ooh, this system can help fill that gap. And this system can fill that gap. If these other people would only see the world as I see it, they would be able to make money. And so you took all of this, you launch out and you start your own thing. What happened next?
Well, let me tell you, during this time where I'm working 3 jobs and still being contracted for somebody else, I'm again inputting all these things. When I'm working overnights, I've got headphones on and I'm listening to again, books on tape or downloaded books at that point. This was in the early teens. I'm still inputting all this information and searching for frameworks and formulas and things that looking for the keys to fit that lock, because I know there's got to be something. And I've acquired all of this stuff, and I found, to be real honest with you, James, when you said that we wanted to talk about some of what made me or got me here today, we started talking about my least favorite subject, and that's me. But I found this framework that actually says the way to grow business is to invite other people into a story and not tell your story. And that was when I found the key that worked for me. So in 2016, late 2016, I was my kids had both gotten into a magnet school in town, which meant we were driving about 30 miles away every morning. I was coming back almost 45 minutes because I was working on the other side of the house, and then bouncing back and forth large chunks of time. So I had this opportunity to open my own place in late 2016. On January 9th of 2017, I had $0. I had 0 clients and 1 signed lease with the opportunity to make it or break it.
Mhm.
And again, this is in an industry where people struggle to make money, struggle to make $20,000 a year.
And where you were
Legal.
making $14,000 a year and having two other jobs.
And I gave all
Yeah.
that up.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I'm back to the goose egg. This is literally a brand new start line.
Okay.
January of 2017. By March of 2018, using just, and again, this framework hadn't even been published yet.
Mhm.
This is based on a series of interviews. You know the system I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
You're talking about building a story brand. You're talking about the story brand framework.
There you go.
Yeah.
I found an interview with Don Miller in 2015, before StoryBrand was StoryBrand, and he started his Building a StoryBrand podcast in 2016.
Mhm.
And the book wasn't even published until actually I got the ARC copy in October of 2017. So this is all grasping at these little pieces where, and the attraction for me is you don't have to talk about yourself, talk about your customers.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
started talking about customers, started telling them the problem that they had and the reason they didn't have to suffer from it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And by March of 2017, just 4 months in, I was at about 50% capacity, which was already over the national average if you amortize out for the year. By July of 2017, just 8 months in, I was completely booked. I had 2 other part-time therapists that were helping me out. And I had already more than doubled the annual. I think at that point I had made $48,000.
Mm-hmm.
When we closed the books on 2017, we were over $120,000 for the year.
Oh, wow.
And on December 3rd of 2017, I looked at my landlord and said, I've outgrown this place. Actually, December 3rd was the date that I signed the lease.
Mm-hmm.
January 9th was the day we opened. So on the anniversary, 1-year anniversary, I leased a space across the courtyard 3 times the size. We went from 4 rooms to 14 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Mother's Day of 2018, we opened the new location. And before the end of 2018, we doubled again. We closed that year with over $370,000 in revenue. I had grown the team. We had 17 tangential. Didn't have any actual employees. It was me and a bunch of contract people, but had 17 people that were somehow involved, whether it was contract therapists, other entities. So again, growing based really on that one system. Again, this is 2018. In September of 2018, I attended the StoryBrand Live workshop. Mm-hmm. Got to meet Don in person. Got to actually learn the system that I was trying to scrape together and piece together from podcasts and from reading the book and rereading the book and practicing on our CRM systems. And so that was 2018. 2019 comes and we had grown. By the end of 2019, we were seeing over 500 clients a month. We had an active client list of over 3,300 clients in less than 3 years in an industry where people struggle to make money, where people can't seem to get the help that they need. And again, all this was based on this one repeatable framework that works every time you use it. And again, just like your audience, the engineers recognize these things and the principles they use. You know, gravity works every time you try it. When gravity stops working, so do I. So.
No, Brandon, that's a really interesting point. An interesting part of your story is being able to apply this system, this marketing framework. It's really not just marketing, but communications framework as you are inviting your customers into this story. And it's a story you're clearly articulating what problem you solve, who you solve it for, and saying it's just not right. It's just not right that you have to suffer from this. And so we're here to help you get over whatever that is. But so that's one part. So that brings the people in. But there's something else that you're doing with your contractors and other folks because they're there, right? They're working. If they're not working and contributing, then you don't have the capacity to see the 500, folks a month or 30, you don't have that.
100%. And I love that you made that slight correction. It's not a marketing framework. And I never considered anything that I did actual marketing. It is a communication. It is the strongest communication framework that it is known to man. And again, the way that I say what I do now is I actually get people to raise their hand and step towards you. And again, you know the 6 critical areas of business, but when you can talk to customers so that they raise their hand, they lean in, and you never
Yes.
chase a sale again.
Yes.
When you can talk about the opportunities that you have, the mission that your company is driven to achieve, the right employees, not any employees, the right employees say, I want to help you achieve that mission. So you never hire the wrong person. When you're looking for tangential business partners or people that need to help your customers so that your customers win, you attract the right business partners, the right resources in all 6. And it's based just on that way that you learn to communicate and the way that you can talk about your business so that you're attracting people, you're not chasing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you turned all of that, the experiences that you've had from the retail store, from working at FedEx, from, now being a massage therapist, to owning a highly successful massage therapist enterprise, a wellness center. And then, okay, now you're doing My Clear Message. So what was the transition? I can understand, hearing what you're talking about, the communication framework. It's clear why you chose what you chose in terms of your clear message, because the message has to be clear. But talk a little bit about that.
So thankfully, nothing has happened that disrupted anything in the past year, and we can all just keep doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, so like I said, in January of 2019, we're billing over $60,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So we are set for 2020. We are so excited because not only are we growing, but we've got the momentum, we've got the right team, we've got everything in our favor, except the world shuts down.
COVID. Yeah.
I did not say that. So what do? You cannot give a massage through Zoom.
Yeah.
Not that I tried. I'm just assuming that, maybe somebody figured it out and they're making millions. But no. So what do we have to do? We've got to do something more. In the meantime, I was in North Carolina. We've got to survive. I don't know how to get out of this. Thankfully, based in part on some early good decisions, in addition to doing very well financially and generating revenue, we paid off all debt. We owed absolutely nothing. And we had a pretty decent chunk sitting in the bank for 5 to 6 months of expenses. Mm-hmm. But what's happening? All we had was question marks. So my wife's company offered her a transfer because the office here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina had been vacant for a while, and they'd offered it to her before and things were going great. We didn't need to move. Yeah. And they offered it to her again. And we thought, well, with everything else being a question mark, maybe this is the time. So I went to my landlord and kind of explained the situation to him. And he says, I just got off the phone with somebody who's looking for space. But I don't think this space will work for them. But we've got another existing tenant that their unit has not been renovated and updated, but that space would work for the person that called. Let's schedule a tour and see what we can do with this existing tenant. Mm-hmm. Did I mention earlier that sometimes you will know the universe is conspiring to make you win?
Yes.
So one of my neighbors came over in the office park, and that space was going to work fantastic for them. And the tenant that the landlord had gotten off the phone with was thrilled with the opportunity to get the space that they were currently in. So we negotiated out of the lease. And again, everything kind of just worked itself out.
Wow.
However, in transitioning states, there's a whole process, and then the world was still closed. So what do I want to do? Well, I started looking around and realizing that not only massage therapists, not only wellness centers, not only service-based centers, but there were so many business owners that didn't have any process. Every morning they woke up at the bottom of the hill and Sisyphus Rock was waiting for them.
Yeah.
So I figured this out. For me, So I wanted to see, does it actually work every time I try it, or does it work every time anyone tries it? Now, thankfully, JJ Peterson helped me along here, and he'd gotten his doctorate proving how narrative traction works and proving how this system works, not in my situation, but in every situation.
Yeah.
So that's when I said, I'm going to do more good in the world by helping a lot of people set this framework into place and build their business, build their service industry, spend time with their family, finally get unlocked and untied from their phone,
Mm-hmm.
and never have to worry about, returning that 9 p.m. phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Brandon, that is, man, it's an awesome story. It's an awesome, the journey that you've had, kind of self-learning, finding frameworks that work for you, being able to then install all of these different pieces into what you are doing right now with my clear message. Listen, if people are, they're listening to you that like, I need to hear more from Brandon. I need to find out more about what he's doing. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
I would love to spend some one-on-one time with people. I mean, you can find me on the socials, but I would actually love to talk with people. So the best way to get up with me is go to myclearmessage.com. Click the big green button that says schedule a call and spend 30 minutes. It doesn't cost you a thing. I would love to learn about you and your business and how I can help you install some frameworks so that you win at life and at work.
That's right. You got to win both. So that's myclearmessage.com to be able to connect with Brandon. Brandon, I want to thank you again for your time, the value that you've added to everyone, all of the listeners of the Engineer Your Success podcast. I'm going to end this session like I end every interview. And I really do mean it, that many people know what to do and there are fewer people that know how to do it. Then there's that select group of people that actually follow through, do it, and they're able to live the life of their dreams. Brandon, I want to thank you because you are part of that select group and you are helping other people enter into that group, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, James. Thank you.